cool is this little spot? It's also creepy. Could be potentially perceived as creepy. Where am I? What am I doing here? All right, gonna get right to sharing. Some people enjoy my rants and others don't. Some things just need to be said. Somebody's got to say them, right? Somebody has to encourage all the good people to stand up and speak out loud and fight for what's right. And hey, coincidentally, on that side note, if anybody can get this message through to them, I'd like to find out if Todd Prescott could offer up any knowledge for the world on potentially why people do sleazy, shit-eating things to people in the Bigfoot Sasquatch community. Maybe Todd can answer that for us. Now, the two events below happened a few months apart from one another. You can say my name, I don't mind. You can read it if you want on one of your videos. I love to listen to your stories while I sit down and do some wood carving. I also love the music at the beginning and the end of your videos. Someday I might try to carve what I've seen in my story. My mother was born in Cochrane, Ontario, Canada. It's a small village about 100 kilometers from James Bay. Her grandmother was a Cree, 100% pure native, and she knew her ways in and out of the boreal forest. My mother told me one day a story from her grandmother about Wendigo. It related to the story of this legendary beast as it was told by the natives. Whenever my mom would tell me about the Wendigo, it was to warn me of something terrible, even if we were living in Montreal then. When my parents and I were going to friends' places outside the big city, my mom would tell me to be aware of the Wendigo if I was going to play outside. As I grew up, I had the chance to go more and more camping, fishing, and hunting with friends. I can tell that I've seen all the wildlife living in Quebec and Ontario. One day I decided that it was time for me to get serious, and I joined the Canadian Armed Forces. On the day my folks drove me to the gate to walk into my new life, my mom told me, "I'm proud of you, my son. I'm sure you would do well. Just be careful when you will be out in the wild. Watch out for the Wendigo." I took that with a smile and a grain of salt. After my basic training, I was sent on to my tradesman course and then to my first posting. I was assigned to the Special Forces of Petawawa, Ontario as a communications specialist. Since my job implied fixing telecom equipment, I had a top-secret security clearance. We trained hard when I was there, and I was ready to go head-to-head with the meanest, biggest monster or enemy I could encounter in my missions to come. One day in February, we were transported via helicopter on a mountaintop close to Algonquin Park for a week of winter warfare course. During this week of training, we each had to go guard duty at night. On one of those nights around 3 a.m., I started hearing funny voices down the mountain. That night, the temperature was around minus 30 Fahrenheit. First, I checked to see if everyone was sleeping in their tents. They were all accounted for. I scanned the area to see if I could locate someone. Nobody there, at least that I could see with my Army-issued flashlight. I kept hearing those voices for a while, so I decided to call out whoever was there. "Hello, who goes there? You're on Canadian Armed Forces base. Identify yourself." No answer. I kept looking for whatever might be there, but I was still hearing the voices that sounded like a Japanese samurai. Some came from the right, others from the left. They seemed like they were having some kind of conversation. Since it was a training and learning exercise, we had no ammo in our weapons. Not knowing what to expect, I did the second best thing I could do. I fixed bayonet and kept on going around our camp. The voices stopped after a while. I was wondering who in their right mind would hike into the wilderness for at least 20 miles in such a miserable weather just to pull a prank on us. That week, by the way, they closed down the base 2 times because it was too cold. Of course, we stayed on our mountaintop. It was part of the training, they said. My replacement came after a while. When he showed up, the first thing he asked me was, "What the F are you doing with your bayonet on your weapon?" I didn't want to say I was hearing voices down below us. Then the answer came to me. Since it was freezing like crazy, I decided to do some drill movements to warm myself up. Did he really believe me? I'll never know, and personally I don't really care. A few months later, there was a huge military exercise in Wainwright, Alberta. The whole brigade ended up there. One day as I was going on a call with my partner to do a repair on a piece of equipment that was out in the middle of nowhere. We'd been driving for about 45 minutes and could not find the equipment we were looking for. Since I was driving and I was tired of going around, I decided to stop and check our location and try to locate our target. My partner was looking at the topographical map while I was trying to see if I could locate a reference point. On our right, there was a forested area with pine and underbrush. On the left, there was an open field for about 500 feet by 500 feet, about 100 feet from the tree line, At my 11 o'clock position, a nice white-tailed deer is munching on some new grass. The deer was facing us and looking our direction once in a while. Then, out of nowhere, a huge thing came out of the tree line and aimed directly towards the grazing deer. It took less time for the beast to cover the approximate 100 feet to the deer than it took me to tell my partner to look at the deer. The beast grabbed the deer by the head without even knowing what the hell was happening. The beast was taller than the deer by about 2 feet. It was reddish-brown in color, very wide shoulders, built like a football linebacker. Head was like pointed and was set on the shoulder without a neck. Arms were long and muscled. Legs were like 45-gallon drums, and the body was covered with long hair. I wish I had more time to look at it and get more details, but everything went so fast. As soon as the beast reached the deer, he placed one hand on top of the deer's head and the other hand on the back of the neck, then twisted it, like if it was a rag. The deer's head was smaller than the hand holding it. The beast turned back on his tracks without even stopping and headed back to the woods with the deer over its shoulder. The only thing I was able to say was, "Did you see that, man?" My partner lowered the map at the same time and asked me, "Saw what?" "Never mind," I said. "Man, those deer run fast here." I threw the tucking gear and said, "Let's get out of here." My partner managed to find the trail leading to our destination, found the equipment we were looking for, and made a repair. Back to the bivouac area, my sergeant asked me if everything went okay. I told him, "Well, Sergeant, I don't know what I saw on our way to the other location, but it was pretty freaky." He looked at me and said, "Corporal, if what you're going to tell me is worth the medal, go ahead. If it's not worth the medal, I don't want to hear about it." So I kept it to myself and walked away. Today I'm in my 60s. I had a nice career in the Army. I did some missions, went on UN peacekeeping missions in Cyprus and Africa. I even had a chance to go on a photo safari when I was in Africa and witnessed a cheetah running after an antelope. I can tell you that they were not as fast as the thing I saw in Alberta. I've seen a whole bunch of things in my life, but never anything like what I saw that day. I never bothered talking about what I experienced in those two events. People have had the bad habit to laugh at those who tell them about these things they do not understand. My sergeant was right that day when he told me that if it's not worth the medal, keep your pie hole shut. Every time those things happen to me, I always remembered my mom telling me, just be careful when you go out in the wild, watch out for the Wendigo. I don't know if it was the Wendigo calling me that cold winter night in Petawawa, or if he was the one snatching the deer of the field in Wainwright. But one thing is sure with me, we are just some little beings on this enormous planet. We should never take anything as granted and think we know it all. The universe takes pleasure at reminding us that we are nothing. I'm also helping those who suffer from PTSD. I have in the past helped a few other people like me encounter something in the forest. This is why my email address is... Alright, I'll say it out loud. You wrote it, brother. Cryptidhelp at... If someone crossed paths with one of those, they can contact me, and it'll be a secret dialogue between them and me. I'm not affiliated with any research organization. I do not intend to do so. The only link I have is with Cryptids Canada YouTube channel, who refer me to people who need to talk about their experience. I'm not in any way also related to the mental or medical world in any ways. I do it to help those who saw the same thing as I saw deal with it the best we can. Thanks, brother. Gaetan Lacasse. Lacasse or Lacasse? Lacasse. Okay, thank you, Gaetan. Thank you so much for sending that email. I absolutely appreciate the time you took to share that with the world through this channel. And for all you who might not be familiar with Alberta deer, whether it be mule deer or whitetail, I've hunted Alberta deer. I think the biggest one I shot was around 375 pounds, and that was a mature buck. So just so you know, the farther north you go in the hemisphere, the larger body the ungulates get. And if that was a mature deer, that thing grabbed and popped its head off. That was a big chunk of meat that it just grabbed and ran away with like it was a rag, right? And how many times have we heard similar stories to that? Dozens. You know, there's a group of hunters, I think near Nordegg, Alberta, and they went to the police, all of them freaking right out, because as they're coming back into camp, a full mature 6-point bull elk, which farther north you go, the bigger the body they get, so that thing's probably 800-900 to even 1,000 pounds. They saw this huge thing on 2 feet, grab it off of their meat hook, and put its head over its shoulder, cupped its muzzle with one hand, and ran away with it. Ran away with a 6-point mature bull elk on its back over its shoulder. But anyway, there you go. There is another one to chew on and take from it what you will. You decide. If that is an authentic story or not, you decide if something in that email is something that you are familiar with or possibly helps you in any way with your puzzle pieces, all right? All right, what do we got? My name is Trish Cornett. My grandma told me a story that happened to her uncle's daughter. This is in the 40s. Her uncle's daughter went missing. She said about 2 years later, grandma, uncle, and son went hunting. They heard humming from the river and both said it sounded like the daughter. They ran down to the river and there was a daughter bathing and a baby humming. When they realized who it was, they hollered at her, and when she seen them, she stood up, and just then, grandma said her uncle said it sounded like a bulldozer was coming through the woods. The daughter was frozen in fear as a Bigfoot came out yelling and swinging its arms. Now my grandmother called it a wild man, not a Bigfoot. But anyway, just as the daughter broke to run, the wild man grabbed the daughter's arm. When she got loose, the wild man grabbed the baby. When the daughter got across the river and looked back, the wild man was waiting for her to come back, and when she didn't, the wild man killed the baby by ripping it apart. All three then ran for their lives. I can't remember if the grandma said if they went back to look for the baby or not, but she did say that her aunt was never the same and she was not right after that. She never got married or had any children. I live in Kentucky. My name is Trish Cornett, and I'm fine with you saying that. Thanks for everything you're doing, Trish. Well, there's a handful. I've never heard of anything like that ever before, Trish. And I'm definitely not in any position to say whether or not that happened. But thanks for sharing that tidbit. And if you have anybody else who is familiar with that story directly and they want to email me their version, feel free to. We'll listen to it and we'll share it if you want. That's quite the story. Incredible. All right, this next one's entitled The Grass Man. Hello, my name is Carl. You can share that. I want to share my second experience with the Ohio Grassmen. I contacted the BFO about it, the BF whatever about it, and took an investigator close to the site on the BFR website. I'm the one fishing in Harrison County, Ohio. The researcher was nice and understood as he'd seen one close by, but he left out a lot of my story. He left out a lot of your story. Go figure. I'd found a honey hole on my friend's farm. They had about 4 or 5 strip pits on the 200 acres they owned. This one was the best, but hard to get to. We took a John boat one day back to a spot I scouted out to camp. It looked like a rock fall made a perfect beach, with high wall all around. Only what looked like a beaver slide, coming down a basically vertical high wall, near where we set the tent. So we camped, caught a stringer full of fish, cooked a bunch, then laid down for the night. Around 11, maybe midnight, I wake up to footsteps shaking the soft ground we were on, coming over the high wall. It walks on 2 feet up to our tent. I hear heavy breathing about 3 feet away. Outside the tent, I wait about 30 seconds and clear my throat. Classic, like what are you doing? It mimics me perfectly, but way louder, like a freaking monster would. So I half shit myself, start screaming at my buddy. He's dead to the world. So I yell, I have a gun, leave me alone. In the head I hear, almost see, drink of water. So I tell it to just get a drink and leave me alone. It waits about a minute, walks to the water's edge, and is drinking out of cupped hands. Walks back around the tent and then back up the hill like a bulldozer. The next morning after a long night, we find about 18-inch footprints near the water's edge and hidden in the reeds. I never saw it as I was scared to even move. But no one that big is walking over a high wall in the pitch dark. I'm sure of that. Thank you for the outlet. I have another story from when I was young that I now know was a Bigfoot or grass man, as they are known around here. Keep up the good work. Later, brother. Okay, man. Thank you. Thank you for that. And maybe you could share with us in another email of what's the exact word-for-word story was that you shared that organization and what it was that they put out to the public. And then possibly we can start to begin to figure out what it is that people don't want you to know. All right? It's a start anyway. Because I want to know. I want to know what people don't want you to know. I want to know why certain people and groups want you to shut up. Don't you? I'm going to find out. Whatever it takes, I'm going to find out. And I'm going to share with every one of you. That's all there is to it. Hello, Steve. My name is Denny. You're welcome to share my name. A little about me. I'm 40 years old and a mother of a teenage daughter. I'm from Oakhurst, California. My folks are big-time hunters and fishermen. So as a child, most of my time was spent in the woods, hunting, fishing, and camping in magnificent Sierra Nevadas. As a child, I've always known of Sasquatch, but never really had an encounter. But at times, I felt I was being watched. And other times, I felt I was definitely not alone while hiking in the woods, and other times, I felt I was definitely not alone while hiking in the woods. But most of the time, I did have a dog with me, so they probably kept their distance. My dad shared his encounter with me when I was little. He saw one while hunting. He said it was way too big to be a bear or any other animal. He said it scared him enough to grab his gun close to him while he was driving. I fully believe he saw one while hunting in the Sierra Nevadas. We moved to Estacada, Oregon in my teens. I spent a lot of time in Mount Hood National Forest, and yes, there are places I know where they are because of the typical signs of tree placements and strange fruits being stacked perfectly. So for me, I've never had the urge to go off any paths, go into the woods alone without a dog or some kind of protection. I've always had respect when going into the woods. I also have always hoped that having that respect and knowing they are there would keep me safe. Now being in my 40s, just living a pretty normal life, just work and home. I don't get to spend as much time in the woods, so getting to take the time to get out and camp is exciting. My folks invited my daughter and I camping at the end of August 2020, before the Oregon wildfires, up at Fish Lake, Oregon. We were so excited. When we got there, it was so beautiful. We had a beautiful spot. My folks have been there for a week or two already. They have a trailer for camping and hunting in. The campsite was at the end of the off-road campsites. My folks had the trailer set up at the edge of the forest. There were multiple fire pits. They decided to set our tent up behind the trailer. It was a sweet spot with its own fire pit. I liked it because it was like we had our own private spot and at the edge of the woods. So anyway, I thought it was a super cool spot. At the time, it couldn't be more perfect until night came around. We had a fire going in the pit in front of the trailer. I asked my dad if he would get some of the coals from the fire so I could start a fire in the back pit by our tent. Before he got the coals for me, I went back there in the dark. There was something right there, in the dark, like it was watching us. It jumped back into the woods with a heavy thud and just stayed where it landed. I ran back to my dad and said, there was something back there. He laughed and said, yeah, probably just a small critter. I said, no, it hit the ground with a heavy thud. He said, it's fine, it's just a critter. I said, okay, whatever, it was big and heavy. He got the coals back there so I get the fire going. My daughter and I sat back by the fire, huddled pretty close. My folks had gone to bed, so it was just me and her alone back there. I had a cup of water with the toothpaste and the toothbrush. She was playing on her phone. I didn't have mine. I locked it in the car. I started to feel uneasy, and I was really trying to ignore it. So I started talking to her about all kinds of life stuff, about how much I love her and how we will never forget this. She kept looking at me all funny. I said, what is it? She said, what's that gross, wet popping sound? I said, I'm not sure. I was hearing it too. I also noticed a very loud bird chirping sounds right above us. I said, are those birds out right now? It was pretty late, like 10:45 p.m. I was kind of starting to think cougars because I know they sound like chirping birds. We went looking at each other all funny. She said she kept hearing the wet popping sound behind me more and more. I was also hearing it behind her. She was really getting grossed out by it. All of a sudden, that wet popping sound went off in my face like it was right in my face. It was super loud. So I stood up so fast in my chair, flew up behind me, and I said, what the heck, out loud. She stood up with me. Then something started to charge us from a little bush behind her. Man, we scattered so fast, screaming and running towards the trailer, tripping on everything in our way. And of course, she dropped her phone. Then went back for it as I'm yelling for her not to. It was terrifying. She did get her phone, brave little soul, and we bum rushed the trailer. My heart was pounding so hard. My dad was mad, saying we have been watching too many damn YouTube videos. I said, no, after that, there's something out there I told you. We took a couple minutes to calm down. I could hear it walking around out there the whole time. I really tried hard to see if I could see it, but I never could see it. I could only hear it. We finally calmed down, so I thought we'd go back to the tent and just go to sleep. I made my mom and her dog Hurry to go with us. Hurley go with us. Hurley is a red heeler. He looked so scared he was shaking. The four of us were laying down in the tent with all the lights on. It was about 11 p.m. I could still hear it walking around out there. I said, Mom, do you hear it? She said, no, it's probably just some little critter. I said, no, it's big. I can hear it walking around out there. I said, you're just being oblivious because you've been out in the woods for so long and you're being oblivious to them. My mom went back to the trailer and left the dog. I tried to turn the lights down and just go to sleep, but as soon as I did, I could hear it again. It was on my side of the tent. Hurley popped his head up, all scared looking. I turned the light up and started yelling out to go away. I started screaming, "Go away," louder and louder. It wasn't leaving. It went over to my daughter's side of the tent. It was so close the dog wouldn't bark. He would just stare at where we could hear it. Then it rubbed on the side of the tent where my daughter was. We were so terrified, she punched at it, and then it flew back and hit the ground hard with a heavy thud. We got out of the tent so fast with the dog, and then went back to the trailer. Oh man, it was a terrible night. We were totally being taunted. I could still hear it out there. It was not going away. We couldn't really sleep in the trailer, so we went to the car. I felt it was still watching us. My folks also have another dog. She's a much bigger dog, a blue tick hound. Her name is Mila. She was a great dog. Nothing should come in camp with her there. I was parked right next to her. She was in the back of my folks' truck. The back was open for her to get in and out. She had enough rope to go around my car when she was out. With that being said, she would not have any more problems. But that wasn't the case. My daughter was in the back seat and I was in the front seat. We just wanted to go to sleep. We had our blankets. I heard Mila give out a half bark, then I heard her get out of the truck. I wasn't going to look around. I had my face covered with a blanket. I don't think I could handle seeing it, especially if he was looking in at us. Mila got in the truck. She gave out half barks every time it came around as a warning that it was getting too close. Really, it circled the car all night. It rubbed against my door several times. Man, it was creepy. I had my car running all night. I literally had to rev the engine every time it rubbed up against the car. It was exhausting. It was about 2:45 a.m. and I was finally starting to see daylight. A tiny pebble hit my passenger window. I said, "That's funny. I only know of one thing in the woods that can throw stuff, a damn Sasquatch." We were supposed to stay another night. That did not happen. I packed up our shit and we left before dark. I took time off for that trip. I was totally sabotaged. I didn't find your videos until this experience. I didn't find your videos until after this experience of looking up sounds and what attracts them. I really think they were just interested in what we were doing. I didn't feel like they wanted to harm us. I guess I don't really know that either. But if they really wanted to, they could have. So it was scary either way. About a week later, September 2nd, there was a crazy big orange full moon. I had to get up super early for work, like 2:40 a.m., and I was in my bathroom with the window open. I heard the most terrifying loud scream. It made me freeze. It was not a cougar. I know what they sound like. This is a very big, mad-sounding scream. I was still very much shaken up from camping, but this was outside my window. I do know what it was, what I was hearing, and I just couldn't believe it, because it was outside my window. I could tell it was echoing, like it was coming from across the street, but still was a god-awful sound to hear so early in the morning from inside your home. I'm not out to scare anyone, but I know this has affected me. I'll keep to what I've been doing. Yes, I live right outside of town, but still in a residential area. I know they travel to eat and everything else. There are lots of them. Thank you, Steve, for sharing the truth. Sincerely, Denny C. I sent 2 photos of our campsite. It looks beautiful during the day. And there's the photos, and I'll share of Denny, and that's quite the frickin' story, man. And again, another family member that basically deserted their family, which means they deserted their natural given duties of having to protect, right? What an insane, scary, and terrifying encounter. I don't envy anybody that goes through that shit. I've been through enough shit myself, but there you go. There's a few more, you guys. Take from them what you will or leave it. It's too easy. Anyway, should be tough to spot something cruising to this hardwood flood flat behind me, wouldn't it? Gets pretty thick once you get out about 50 yards. But anyway, I gotta get going. I got stuff to do today. Things to share, things to learn, see, and do. Before you post, there's that email that photographed
Well, of course, on a backpack sheet blanket, I always expect to have a
They want to tell all the giant. They went on to tell of all the giant princes. Here's the complimentary 360. So I got a story here from who are interested in this topic. I'm going to share this because the story I'm about to tell is very hard to believe. Oh my god, it's a big one! Alright, so I'm back. I've been away for a couple weeks, and I have been basically all over British Columbia again.